Welcome to Season 2 of Gray Maybe, a limited series podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, the body. My name is Jillian Schmitz. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I've found that things aren't just black or white, or as simple as yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I will be sharing my own process through personal stories, interviews, and hopefully stories from listeners in an effort to help lessen the stigma and shame of disordered eating, eating disorders, and body image. If you'd like to share your story of ED recovery on this podcast, anonymous or otherwise, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we begin. The topic of disordered eating, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and other behavior related to the body may not be difficult for me to share anymore, but it wasn't always this way. I recognize and anticipate the possibility of judgment or disbelief about my experiences, ranging from my own family members to strangers, in addition to the potentiality of losing certain opportunities for publicizing my own experiences. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as suggestion or advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: eating disorder, disordered eating, anorexia, bulimia, body dysmorphia, drug use, and suicide. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Gray Maybe. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have a very official person. This person is actually my financial advisor. Very, very, very important person in your life. If you don't have a financial advisor, I highly suggest you seek one out. And hey, I'm interviewing one today, so you might actually be able to link up with him at some point. This person today is a very special friend of mine. I'm lucky enough to have a friendship with this person, have gotten to know them over quite a few years now. Pre-pandemic is when we met. And I found this individual to be one of the most insightful and honest people in recovery, in his shares, in his relation to this particular ailment. And I'm so pumped and I feel so privileged that he agreed to come on and talk about it. This is my friend Kevin. Kevin, welcome to the podcast, and will you kind of reintroduce yourself to anyone who might want to know a little bit about you?
Of course, of course. Thank you, Julian. Thanks for those kind words. Likewise. Our friendship is, it's been pre-pandemic. Back when we were going to meetings. Can I talk about
Yes, yes.
Stuff?
We met in OA, which is a 12-step program for overeaters. I mention it a lot on this podcast. Even though it's called Overeaters Anonymous, you don't have to be an overeater to qualify. This is a very broad program. Neither Kevin and I would necessarily, I think, relate to being just an overeater, and we found a lot of solace there. But yes, we met there. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, we met there, and when the program was thriving, and then post-pandemic, it really fell apart. It was it's been kind of sad, actually, because I mean, I was going to maybe two or three meetings a week,
Mm-hmm.
and we would do fellowship, and there was a real camaraderie. And then once the pandemic hit, everyone stayed home and went on Zoom meetings, and I did those for a while. But I just missed the spontaneous connection of fellowshipping And when you're on Zoom, it really can be only one person talking at a time. So it's hard to have kind of this banter and so that kind of sort of communal feeling that
Yeah.
you would get in live person. So I've been going back to meetings now, but it really the attendance is not there like it used to be. So
Yeah.
I feel bad for some of the people who I just wonder about what if, the people in recovery if they've lost their abstinence. Have we talked about abstinence on this pod?
Yes, yes. So I talk about a sobriety, but an abstinence is also that for people who don't know. We talk about abstinence in OA as, what abstinence is. It's relinquishing from a certain behavior. So some people have an abstinence of not eating sugar because they're addicted to sugar. Some people's abstinence is not. So one of my abstinences, for example, is not restricting because that's what I like to do. So yes, so I wonder as well, all of our fellows, we had a really good, strong community, especially at the Tuesday meeting that we used to go to. And I wonder a lot about some of those fellows. So that's where we met. That's the only way we really know each other. And then we've continued a friendship and have employed you as my financial advisor. That is what you do for work. You're very smart with the finances.
Yeah,
Um,
I've
and
also
you go ahead.
well, I've also started after the pandemic. I started playing. I used to be a professional musician. That's how I
That's right. I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's how I used to. So I made my money doing that, and then I started only taking gigs that paid so when people would call me, I would only ask about how much it paid.
Hmm.
And I didn't get into music because I wanted to make money. I got into music because I like the way to play.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's a lot easier ways to make money than by playing music.
Oh, yes. There's a lot of easy ways to make money than be an artist. In fact,
Right.
I can think of every other way to make money
Yeah.
than be an artist.
Right. And people say, "Oh, you do what you love." Well, I mean, it's only maybe 20% of the time that you're doing what
Right.
you love. The other time you're hustling and doing stuff. So I stopped playing professionally and I went to financial advising. And just after the pandemic, I got so cooped up and I just wanted to go get a band, so I joined a band and now we've been playing out a lot. And so it's been really fun. And people are wanting to come out again and see. I'm sure it's the same thing in your. Are they familiar with what you do?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people who listen to this podcast are most likely dancers.
Oh,
So
okay.
they definitely relate to the gig nature, the artist nature,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Another crazy thing is that I don't think we've talked about at all, which I'm glad that you kind of interluded with, is that when we all went to the pandemic and Zoom did become like a primary form of communication, people who do have body dysmorphia, like the Zoom situation is not ideal. Like
Right.
it's not, it's kind of like a setup. And so also for a program like OA that is so, much about people, their bodies, their feelings about their bodies, their image, their body dysmorphia, how they view themselves, it's probably like I did like a couple of meetings over Zoom with OA when I was in New York working. But I didn't do a ton of them. And so I don't really know what that culture was like, but I can't imagine like that of all the programs, OA thrived the most with Zoom, like I
Yeah.
can't imagine I feel like that is probably part of like the reason why it might have had such a hard time continuing. On top of like people with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, disordered eating, all of those things, I do find them as a group of people to be some of the most secretive of all the
Oh, okay.
programs.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that I should segue into kind of my story because of this.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a compulsive overeater, bulimic, recovering bulimic. I've had 5 years of recovery from purging,
Hmm.
and so it started. It, it started really innocently, I would
Hmm.
like I used to take my ex girlfriend out. Can I be explicit about foods? Can I talk about specific kinds of foods? Is that
Yes, we put a lot of trigger warnings on, and um I guess the only thing is like if there is anything that you think is like telling someone how to have an eating disorder, you might want to restrain from like your if it's I guess like use your own judgment. We can put tons of trigger warnings on. um I know like one of my guests refrained from saying a couple of things just because she was like, I don't want to give people that information because I feel like they might want to use it.
Yeah.
But it's a fine line between us being brutally honest in our behavior and other people hearing that and be like, oh my God, I do that too, or I want to do that, or whatever,
Okay.
and destigmatizing it, and then also like, giving people a playbook and how to really get into it. But at the same time, you can't make anybody not do anything, or you can't make anybody do anything. So
Okay.
everybody has their own responsibility. But go ahead, tell me when you think how it began for you.
I mean, I didn't start. I wasn't bulimic in high school. I mean, I always had a weird problem with food in the sense that I came from a family where, like, I didn't. Like, for example, my mom didn't really eat dinner with us at the table. She kind of just would never serve herself.
Do you know
And
there's a term for this now?
what's it called?
An almond mom.
That's
It's a mom who's like eating a handful of
yeah,
almonds and that's it. Like that they don't eat. They're like moms that don't eat.
yeah. And I thought that
Yeah.
was their superpower. Like, oh, moms, like like they don't eat because that's what just their gift to to the world is. They get to not they don't have to worry about caloric
Yeah,
intake.
women don't eat. We don't eat. We
Yeah,
don't need
you
it.
guys
Our
don't eat.
bodies don't need food. We
Yeah,
just keep moving.
just breathe. You
Yeah, just breathe.
just breathe. It's in the air. But so anyhow, I modeled that a lot, and so I would eat sometimes like the same thing every day. Like for in high school, I would get like a bagel and an ice cream sandwich, and I would eat that every day for lunch. So I definitely had disordered eating, but I
Hmm.
wasn't bulimic
Hmm.
until it started with when I was going out with my ex girlfriend, and we would go out to get frozen yogurt or ice cream, and
Hmm.
she couldn't finish hers, and so I would eat hers, and then I would eat too much.
Hmm.
And ice cream being the nature, it's kind of it's not really food. It was easy to
Right.
purge, and
Right.
so I taught my body how to do that,
Hmm.
and it really was no problem for me. It wasn't painful. It didn't hurt. I mean, I maybe lucky, unlucky. It was really easy for me to purge. So
Mm.
I just started. I started eating more and more and purging more and more to the point where it just became completely normal to me that behavior. I
Hmm.
didn't tell anyone, and so that was about a year. So then I was full blown. Every night I would go. I'd go to work. We'd come back and go to the market and buy a bunch of food and just watch TV and binge and purge just until I
Hmm.
fell asleep. I mean, sorry, Quinny, my dog.
The little dog sneeze.
Yeah, yeah. So so that would happen, and then the cycle just kept going. It kept getting deeper and deeper, and I fell into more shame because I knew it was gross. I knew it was ugly. It's the kind of thing that you can't be a social bulimic. Like
Yeah.
a social drinker. Like there's no way to be a bulimic and like I'll just have a couple throw ups.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're gonna be caught for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, like I'm not in the in like, hey, yeah, like come over and we'll binge and purge a little bit and then you can go home. It's like there's no happy hour for bulimia.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And it's even more it's way more so than even just like restricting. I
Yeah.
do feel like that works best too when someone's eyes aren't on you.
Yeah.
But you can always lie. Like I lied a lot to people, like, oh, I already ate, or oh, I'm not hungry. That was what I used to say that a lot. I'm not hungry. I
Yeah.
used to say that all the time. I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry, or there's nothing here I can eat. Like this food isn't, it's bad for you food,
Right.
like,
Right.
oh, it's, I can't eat it. I'm not hungry. And that was like all a lie. But it got people off my back.
Well, I went one step further. I would tell people that I was uh, a celiac. I was allergic to gluten.
We
I,
both did that. You and I
I,
both did that. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
I made up all these. I'm allergic to X, Y, Z. Everything. And the coolest thing about that, well, cool, but is that it got me a lot of attention because everyone would be like, "Oh, Kevin, like he's so fragile. He can't eat all this stuff."
Oh, Kevin, can you have this? We should make
Yeah,
something
yeah,
special for
yeah,
Kevin.
yeah, yeah.
Ask
And
for
then
Kevin's special dietary. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm like, oh, he's and there was nothing wrong with me. I was completely fine. Hold on, I got my Quinny's going first.
Yeah, yeah. Go see what Quinny's up to.
Sorry.
She needs to be the lap dog. She's a
Yeah,
lap dog doggy. She's a
she's getting
queen.
she's getting too much. I'm getting too much attention, and she's getting jealous.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
so
I'm glad we have her. So
yeah,
I did the same thing at one point. I was very convinced that I had a wheat intolerance, like close to celiac, or like that I just couldn't, like I couldn't metabolize bread products. I also at the same time had this belief that they were very bad for me,
Mhm.
that that they were doing irreparable harm to my digestion and my system, and that it was somehow like borderline toxic. But really, for me, what was happening was I was starving all the time. And then when I would cave and eat something, I would eat something so highly caloric. And if I did eat like pizza or something, and
Yeah.
that would be bread. And of course, like then I wouldn't go to the bathroom because my metabolism had been slowed down and sluggish because I hadn't been eating. And then I piled on like, dense food, probably wasn't drinking enough water. So of course then I'm gonna like deal with constipation. If you're not regularly eating, you're not gonna regularly poo. And so I always say that not because I like, talking about my bathroom habits to anybody who would listen,
Mhm.
but it is a thing. And I really thought that I had a problem until in recovery, when I ate normal meals, I was like, oh, I can eat those things and it's totally fine. But you and I bonded over that. I remember we were both like, oh, yeah, I had like all these allergies. And I love that you had the insight to be like, well, and then I got attention for it. I never wanted attention. I wanted people to like ignore that had anything to do with food. But I love that you had that insight because it's so fucking honest,
Yeah.
you know, like why we do the things we do. And I so relate to you talking about righteousness in restricting, which you've
Yeah.
talked about before. Would you elaborate? You talked a little bit about it with women, like she's a superhero because she doesn't eat,
Yeah.
like seeing your mom. Like, will you talk about that a little bit? Because it's one of my favorite things you've ever mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I've also thought I was so distorted in my thinking that I actually had the superpower. Like, so I'm bulimic. So I had this, this gift
Mm,
to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and you will never see it on my body.
right.
It's like, can you imagine? I mean, that's pretty much nirvana if you think about it. Like that's like and so I really thought of myself as like, I mean, it was like the height of arrogance,
You
really.
thought you found a loophole.
Yeah, I found a loophole to the eating, and so I found a way that I could eat whatever I wanted. Just can you imagine? I mean, just like eating, what, just anything you want for forever, and then you never have the effect of it. Yeah, I
Hmm.
never would look overweight. I'd
Hmm.
always look good. So eat whatever you want and look. I mean, look. I mean, I definitely got too skinny, but I never, I always could control it too.
Right.
So yeah, those kinds of, yeah, kind of having this superpower, like, oh, like the it's been a theme through my life. Even when I was a kid, like when I was playing music, I thought that like artists, like I didn't have to deal with the real world because I was
Hmm.
an artist and I was gifted, and
Mm.
there was a lot of arrogance in the way that I grew up. Like I had some superpower that you don't have, and I don't have to do the things that you have to do. Like I don't have to worry about my bank account. I don't have to, go to the market, or just a lot of entitlement, and so
Right.
that transferred over with food. I was entitled because I had this, because I could, and people will comment on me like, Kevin, how do you eat so much and stay so thin? I go, well,
Yeah, you're like, I'm just lucky, I
I'm just
guess.
like that. I got a high metabolism.
Oh yeah. I never went for the high metabolism
Yeah,
line, but I did tell people a lot that like, oh, I'm just eating clean. There was like
yeah,
definitely a righteousness that I got from like saying that I ate really, you know, clean. That's like
right,
the code term that
right,
everyone, I'm eating clean, which means I'm eating organic, non-GMO. I'm like just like
yeah.
I'm so much, like, and I don't eat that poison. I don't eat that
Yeah.
crap that the rest of you. Oh my God, that food that you guys
You
are
guys,
eating.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You be like, yeah, all you like
You
peasants that eat.
peasants, yeah, you peasants, like what you're eating. And it's so ridiculous now. And I'm making fun
Yeah.
of it because it is ridiculous. And
But I mean,
that's,
it's the same thing that when you see like a supermodel eating Carl's Jr. Remember those ads with like
yes,
you would see
the
this like,
early 2000s ads
yeah,
where they're
you
like
just it's like,
riding an electronic bull and like
yeah,
in a bikini, like eating a
it's like
giant
a
triple
cheeseburger.
burger.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, well, of course she can eat being like that. Like that's how, because that, they're the special kind of people who can eat like that. It's like
What a gaslight. What
yeah,
a gaslight. Because,
isn't that
like, I'm not saying that those girls couldn't, I don't know, but let's be real. Like, a majority of people who are in entertainment
yeah,
are struggling to keep a body looking a certain way, whether it's weight, whether it's their face, whether it's like, I mean, there's so
yeah,
many things we don't know what people are doing. It's such a gaslight.
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. So anyhow, and the main thing, another big component about this is the shame that I have from being a guy. Like
Yes.
I didn't know any other men who had this problem.
Yeah.
Like I didn't. I there was never. I mean, I heard about like Lady Di, was bulimic, and
Right.
I knew a lot of women were bulimic, but like men, like no,
Yeah.
like I mean, for lack of a better word, it was a woman's disease. You know
I
what
think yeah, I think eating disorders in general are assigned to women, and that's why I'm another reason why I'm so glad you're willing to come on today. And I've met quite a few men in OA, and that's always been like really interesting and shocking because of the idea that this only predominantly affects women, and it does affect probably more women than men,
Yeah.
but there are still a lot of men, and I do feel like for women, when someone finds out that a woman is bulimic or has an eating disorder, they're like, "Oh my gosh, let's get you help." And I feel like the idea from men is just kind of like, "That's weird." Like, what?
Mhm.
Like,
Like,
oh,
yeah,
okay, like
like,
get over it. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, and I
yeah.
don't know if that's been your experience, but I feel like culturally, that's how that would be.
Well, it's just like, like if I would when I was younger, if I was around, like a bunch of guy friends and I ordered a Diet Coke, it'd be like, "Diet?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
why are you getting a Diet Coke? Like, or a light beer? You're gonna drink a light
right.
beer?" Wh
Yeah,
you that was just like that was the culture back.
yeah.
I mean, it's totally changed now. I mean, everyone's, like, much more accepting of it's not like that rigid male female role, but when I was growing up, it was
Hmm.
hard. I mean, like it was hard to admit a lot of things, and you really couldn't kind of express yourself, and so I carried that into my eating disorder.
For sure.
So it took me a lot. It took me a lot to get to meetings. I was really scared going to my first meeting, super scared, because I didn't think that I would identify with anyone. And to be honest, I really don't see that many male bulimics. There aren't that many
Hmm. Hmm.
still. I mean, I think there are a lot of there's some closeted people, I'm sure, and I'm sure people like I know back in the day, like the jockeys, the horse race,
Yes.
they had to make any sport where you have to make a weight
Yeah.
the danger of being bulimic, and because you got to weigh in, and
That's a good point.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, like because and like wrestling, and like you hear some like these wrestling or these fighters who have to like it's like
Yeah.
they dehydrate just so they can make weight, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
but
sure. That's a really good point.
yeah, yeah. But so how did I? So I relapsed a lot, and it definitely affected my job. I mean, because I would stay up late,
Mhm.
purging, and I only get a couple hours of sleep, and then I have to
Right.
go to work,
Right.
have a food hangover, and then I
Right.
lack of sleep, and so I wasn't present. And so, luckily, it didn't affect me so much that I lost my job or anything. I was able to
Mhm.
keep it together, but I really had no life.
Mhm.
If I went out socially for anything, like I could never stay out past 9. I would always leave early so I can go
Mhm.
back and eat. I never wanted to stay out and hang out with my friends.
Right. And I'm wondering if you're similar in this way. Like, I've realized in recovery that my eating disorder served as kind of like an insular thing to kind of like insulate me from other people and things, so that whether it's like I have to be home by 9 because I have to do this other stuff, or whether it's like I don't want anybody to ever see me eat, so you're not relating to people over food, or like being fully engaged in those moments, or if it's like denying food from people, which is one of my earliest behaviors, was like not taking food from my mom. Like she was always like, eat breakfast. And I was like, no. And that
Yeah.
was like one of my ways of like really asserting some kind of control as a kid. And I'm just like wondering, like, because I know you and I have talked a little bit too about like with our families, how we definitely, have had our ways of like kind of really, I don't know if you want to call it a boundary or a wall,
Mhm.
depending on how we're feeling or what it's looking. But I know that I've used that as an excuse to kind of separate myself, like especially the righteousness with the food and the stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if like you leaving at 9 p.m., like do you feel like that was part of it? Do you relate to that, or is that not kind of
No,
your thing?
definitely relate to it because I just couldn't get weight. I had an addiction to get home
Right.
and eat, and I mean, I wanted to get all my goodies and my food, and I didn't want to eat with my friends because I didn't want this because I wanted to wait and save my appetite
Mhm.
so I could so I could indulge. And so I, I never wanted to, I never wanted to go away and sleep over or go on a vacation where I couldn't have access to food,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
never wanted to stay out, late because or hang or eat with friends, have a meal with people because
Mhm.
then it would because I had such a pattern, such a rigid schedule. I would wake up, I would starve myself probably until noon, and then have a little something at noon, and then I'd be really ravenous by the time I got home, and I'd just buy
Mhm.
all this food and I'd just go at it.
Yeah.
And I got addicted to that cycle because the rut. I mean, when you put that much food into your body,
Mhm.
it's like it's like shooting heroin. It's like
Yeah.
you just get it's like a rush of like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
For your
crazy.
brain and
Well,
everything.
I've never shot heroin, but I mean I've done drugs, and it was like doing like coke or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. You just get that dopamine, that hit
yeah,
hardcore, whatever the actual like, brain stuff that happens.
yeah,
There is also like for prolonged not eating, there is also like a high that you can get from not eating. If you do it every once in a while, you're not gonna get it. You're gonna get like moody and tired
yeah,
and bitchy and like your stomach's gonna growl and you're gonna be like not be able to focus. But if you starve all the time, if that's like your MO, you can kind of like get a high off of that more than just like the righteousness, but also like a weird little buzzy anxiety high. And I don't
yeah,
really know how else to describe it. But there's that. There's also like I relate to you saying like you can't go on vacation, you can't sleep over. Like I did a ton of traveling throughout my career and I continued to. And because I was so, because I wouldn't feed myself, I was never like planning my meals. So even though I was like, telling people, oh, I eat clean and all this bullshit, like I was never planning my meals. So then I would be at like airports or like weird gas stations, you're traveling, touring, whatever. You're in like the worst places to try to figure out food. And I would just be like, oh, there's nothing here I could eat. So it would like reinforce this weird thing. And then I would also get just like pissed. I would just be
yeah,
like angry, like, oh, all the food everywhere is terrible. And like, I can't eat any of it. It was like this weird victim shit that then I would like be mad and then feel sorry for myself because like nothing was working out in my favor. That was a very common one.
yeah. But and I would have to travel a lot of times. I did have to go do gigs or go out.
Right.
I would figure out a way to get my food and throw it up.
Yeah.
I would totally figure it. I would go or wait, or I'd go out walking, or if I had to go
Hmm.
to a business meeting, and I got my own hotel room, I did it there too.
Yeah.
I never. I mean, it was that ingrained in me. And for me, I had to go to a rehab.
Hmm.
I had to go to rehab, and it's a little bit different than 12 step. It was this program out in Santa Monica, and
Hmm.
they were really good. Like they taught me how to eat. One of the things, I mean, I don't recommend this for everybody, but this is what
Hmm.
they did with me. They
Hmm.
made me go out to have fast food.
Oh
And
wow, that would be a high anxiety situation.
yeah,
Right into recovery. Like if you're someone like me who believes that that food, which by the way, just people who listen, I will eat fast food now. Not often, but I will eat it and I'll totally enjoy it and be fine with it. But that's like such a high anxiety for
yeah,
someone who believes that like they might be A allergic, B that it's like toxic, that it's super bad for them, that you're
yeah,
living your righteous and your identity based on how clean you eat. That's
right,
like so hard.
yeah. And they would, and I would like, what, they go, okay, you have to go to Carl's Jr. And I was like, no, no, I
You're
can't
like,
go there.
no, not that. And then they would sit
Like,
and watch you, right? They would make sure you
yeah,
didn't do anything.
yeah. And then on Wednesday night, they would take us. It was me and a group of people, and we would have to go out, and they wouldn't tell us where we're going, and they would bring
Oh
us
my God.
some random place like pizza,
Oh my God.
and that's all you get. You have to eat
And you
pizza.
had to eat something there.
Yeah, you had to eat pizza, and
Oh my gosh.
and people were like, we all were just like,
It's like losing your fucking minds. And
yeah,
this sounds so crazy to people. Like I'm dying laughing at us. Like not
yeah.
in a bad way. I'm not laughing at us, but
No,
like
it's awesome.
most people would be like, fuck yeah. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, what terrible food are you gonna have? Well, please make me eat it, like
yeah,
make me eat some French fries. And like I'm sure there was like a double-edged sword. Like there is like the pleasure of that food that I don't
yeah,
think anyone can really deny unless you do have like some of the more I want to say niche just because they aren't talked about as much like the texture problems that some people have along with an eating disorder
Right.
is like certain textures they absolutely cannot tolerate, and that can contribute or be like a byproduct or in addition to an eating disorder. So minus that, like I'm sure you were like okay with like, oh yeah, I love this type of food, but like terrified at like you couldn't do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so like you would rather not do it. I can't imagine the meltdowns that are happening because it's giving me anxiety right now, even though I'm, like I will eat that food, but like I can't imagine early on being,
Right.
like, out of control about that. Like, that is such an in vivo experience where
Yeah.
you're like, "Here you are in it, do it, deal with it."
Yeah. Yeah. Eat it. Like this is your dinner, and you have to. And then we'd have to. I have to eat. I have to have dessert. After meals. And I because I hadn't been full. I had because I'd lost all sense of hunger,
Yeah,
and so I didn't know when I was full or I tricked my body, and it would
yeah.
be full and then it'd be empty, full and empty, and so I never, and so I had to relearn how to eat. And one of the things we did, we'd have to sit around at the table, and we would eat our food, we get it, and we all eat, and we all had to like be around and talk together,
Oh my gosh.
and we could talk and be social, like we had to like you know interact. And when we had to stay there for an hour, and so the therapists who were helping us would say, okay, I'm going to give you a half hour signal in 15 minutes and 45 minutes, so you could pace your, so you wouldn't eat it all at once, or you could,
Right, so you can try to slow down for those of
yeah,
you who are used to gulping down your
right.
food.
And then those of us who put it off, then we would go, okay, it's time to eat a little bit more.
Yes, right, so the anorexics that are pushing it
Yeah,
around on the plate. Like,
yeah,
I'm being
yeah,
very stereotypical, but, like, there's categories that a lot of
yeah.
people fall into.
Yeah, but that really, I mean, I don't think I could have done it without OA, or I think that really helped me out in terms of just the practical, because OA
Right.
doesn't really get specific about measuring, and like,
No.
I mean, different sponsors might have that, but it's more, it's a spiritual program more than it is telling you what to do. But I think that for me, I was so far off that I really needed to go. And it was just an outpatient rehab. Like, I just went out
Right.
to work. It wasn't like I went away to, Iowa for a month
Right,
or something like
right.
that.
Oh, Iowa, that would be terrible. That would be like sorry, Iowa, anyone.
Yeah.
I'm from the Midwest, I can say that. But, you know, and this is the interesting thing about food addiction. I'm just gonna say that as a blanket statement, or body food addiction, exercise addiction, all the things that have to do with the body. It's, if you're gonna stop drinking, you just stop drinking, right? Like, even if you're going to meetings, you want to stop drinking, you're going to meetings, but that's really the deal, right? That's the sobriety. You're either drinking or you're not. Easy, black
Yeah.
and white, right? Not easy to do, but easy to understand. And same thing with like, drug addiction. You're either doing drugs or you're not. And, like some of those things might entail like going to a center and being weaned off to make
Right.
sure that you're not going to have any kind of, disaster side effects. But that's the sobriety. When it comes to things like food or like intimacy addiction, sex addiction, like these are really muddy topics because these are things that are in your life. You're not going to be able, I mean, maybe some people could go with abstinence, but in their sexual life and relationships, but I don't think that's realistic for a majority of people. So it's like, how do you navigate that from going to from super dysfunctional to functional? It's not like you can just not eat and that will make you better. It's not like you could just not do that. You still have to eat, and there's still a lot of really complicated feelings and behavior attached to that. So I'm glad you brought up like going to a rehab facility because that gave you some skills in how to do that. I highly suggest anyone getting a nutritionalist, working with someone,
Oh, and
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick, by the way, and my insurance paid for it, so it wasn't like,
Amazing.
yeah. So like, I had, I didn't, I mean, I'm out with Kaiser now, but I had Blue Cross, but insurance will pay for this,
Yes,
and if you're at a job, like, where if you're worried about it for being like corporate and people are going to find,
right.
they can't. There's
They
HIPAA
can't. Yeah,
laws.
HIPAA
Yeah.
laws.
So you can go, you can have your company or your whatever health insurance pay for that treatment,
Hmm.
and your coworkers won't know.
Yes,
I
that's a
mean,
really good point.
yeah, and so because that, a lot of people, I mean, I didn't want people to know. I mean, I still don't want, like, my clients. Now I don't care quite as much, but when I was first coming out, I had a lot of shame. I didn't want people to go like I thought I might hurt my career or something like that.
Right,
Like, I'm not
same.
gonna, I'm a financial advisor. I'm not gonna, he's bulimic. Oh my god, he can't handle my money because he's a
I'm
he's a
like, I want someone highly anxious,
yeah,
handling my money.
yeah,
Actually, that's exactly who I want. I
yeah,
want someone who's like, who, because most people who deal with eating disorders are like, like are suffering from anxiety, are suffering from a lot of big feelings, are usually
yeah,
highly sensitive people. I'm like, that's exactly who I want looking at my money.
yeah,
So
yeah,
someone who's gonna call me and be like, "Don't take your money out, just chill out," or "This is good,"
yeah,
like I need that. I need that for me. But
yeah.
okay, I'm really glad you said all of that. Is there anything that you recall, like early in your life? I mean, you had said that you watched your mom not be like, like an almond mom, like not eating a ton. I also watched my father not really eat one big meal at night and like drink
Yeah.
sodas all day, which probably contributed to him having some blood sugar problems later in life.
Mhm.
But so is there other things that you recall, or was this just kind of like more of a behavioral thing that came up later
No,
with
no,
like
it was early on. So, um, from my family, was we were very image conscious, so like it was important to look good, and so
same was my same.
I
Yep.
mean, not just thin, but like like dress well, look hot, just
Hmm.
look. I mean, that was more important than how you felt. To me, that's the message I got.
Yeah.
But so I took that. I was very very body conscious of my body, and my dad sometimes would he would say he would comment on my body. He goes, "Oh, you're putting on some pounds there, Kev," or stuff like that, or or you're too skinny. Like I never was
Mm,
right. So I could never really fit what the right image, and also it was some of my own fault. I just didn't trust my mom. Like my mom would say I look good,
hmm.
and what I heard was you're fat. Like, I
Mm,
thought like, looking good to her was me looking bad. Like, I thought she
hmm.
wanted me to kinda be this, like, Pillsbury Doughboy.
Right.
That would be the ideal, like, this cute little cherub guy,
Right.
you know? And so I didn't trust her.
Right.
And that part of that's on me, I mean, that's not my mom's fault. I had, like, that rebellious tendency, and I was like, I kinda just didn't listen to her.
Right.
I didn't trust her. If she said I looked good, I assumed that I didn't look good.
Mm.
That I look kind of like a homebody or something like that.
Okay.
I didn't look
Yeah.
cool. Like
Well,
how
there's a lot of families that are like, if you're not actively eating whatever they're making, it's
yeah,
like almost offensive, or also like you're always too skinny. Like especially you come from some of the Midwest or East
yeah,
Coast, like there is this like food is love. This is how I show love. Don't reject me, and also like you're always going to be too thin
yeah,
to them culturally. A lot of times, to a lot of people I know have
yeah.
witnessed that.
There was that, and then also, I used to I wanted to be a rock star as a kid, and heroin chic was like the happening thing in the '70s. I mean, look at Mick Jagger and look at all those guys. So I always like to me that was the aesthetic to look like Iggy Pop
Yep.
or Mick or whoever. So who are some of those other guys? I mean,
All
Hendrix.
of the hair band guy, all those guys in the 70s, Aerosmith,
Yeah,
Mick Jagger, you know what that look is. They're like very wavy, long hair. They
yeah,
move kind of wavy. It's almost like a slightly androgynous type of
yeah,
look because
yeah.
they are so thin.
Well, because
It's a
Bowie, yeah,
very iconic image.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bowie too, definitely Bowie.
Yes.
And when I read his biography, when Bowie was that thin, the guy was doing like coke, and he was like having one thing of orange juice per day. I mean, like like that was unattainable without like.
Yeah.
And he even admits it. I mean, like, or he did admit it when he was alive.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was very influenced by those '70s rockers,
Yeah.
and the and that really skinny kind of like you said androgynous thing. So that combined with that, I became very self aware of what my body looked like,
Hmm.
and really wanted to control it and control the way that my body was shown to the people in the world too.
Now, when your dad would say like, "Oh, you've been putting on some weight," was that like, uh, despite how you took it, like, because there's also like men are encouraged to not be skinny a lot of times. Like, they're
Yeah,
like, it's like this idea that, like, don't be skinny. You're going to be, I don't know if it's like you're going to be weak. You're like a woman, which is like the
yeah,
worst thing. Apparently, culturally, the worst thing you could tell a guy is that he's like a woman because we're just so terrible, I guess. Like it's all that, like, think about a pussy, like,
yeah,
like, you look like a girl or you're weak or like all of it is, like very much, because apparently you can't be there's nothing worse you could call a guy than being related in relation to being like a woman. But did you ever have any kind of like a duality of feeling like, oh my gosh, like, because you said, oh, I'm too skinny, or that, or like, or were you very much like, I know exactly what I want to look like, I want to look like these 70s drug addict
Yeah.
rock stars, or were you like, yeah, no, I should actually like be put on weight and be whatever this quote unquote manly is? Did you fluctuate between those two, or were you like very clear about how you wanted to look?
I was I mean, my dad would tease me. I mean, the way I mean, he was more like teasing. He was like, "Hey, you're putting on a few pounds, you're gaining a few lbs,
Right.
like it wasn't like a real stern like sit me down and but there was a time though when I got skinny. He said like you're gonna your body's gonna eat itself. You're gonna die, and
Mm,
like that. But he could be really kind of like heavy handed. But in
right.
terms of your question about I think I always wanted to be thin. I don't think I did play. I played football for a while, but I couldn't play anything besides wide receiver because I was too thin. I couldn't
Hmm.
bulk up.
And you were fine with that? You were like, whatever.
Yeah,
You're like, I
yeah,
like it.
because the people that I hung out with were not gym rats.
Okay.
My peer group were like wannabe hipsters.
Okay.
We wanted to be like punk rock, and we wanted to
Right. Okay. So
like
that was that
mod.
whole
So yeah,
aesthetic.
we were way more into like the skinny kind of like artist, Kerouac and all
Right.
that stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, so the aesthetic for us, the cool way to be was not, and most of the women that I've dated have never wanted. They never have told me, oh man, like you're too, like you need to go and get some
Right.
steps or something like that. I don't know. I think there are a lot of women who really aren't into that whole like huge
Huge bulky thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not thing. Huge
Just my
bulky aesthetic.
Yeah, it's just my experience. Maybe I should attract those kind of people, but
Yeah.
yeah. So no, I never really wanted to beef it up or like or be Mr. Universe or anything like that.
Because there's a newer term that I just learned. There's a documentary on it. It's called bigorexia. I mentioned it in another episode, and it's about people who basically have the opposite of like what I would say you and I have. Whereas like you and I might be dysmorphic in our mind, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we kind of always want to be very thin, and we always are kind of afraid of not being thin, or we might even see things that aren't there. Whereas these people are afraid of being thin and want to bulk up. It's a lot of people who do a lot of weightlifting and a
Right,
lot of the bodybuilding stuff, and it's called bigorexia, where they're like obsessed with and can't see that they are already gigantic. They
right,
just see themselves as small and weak. Whereas, like, every day of the week, I could point out where I've gained weight, and it's not true. It's
right,
not based in reality. It's totally dysmorphic and based on how I feel, not what is actually happening in reality.
right.
But I just thought it was so interesting because it's so the polar. It's like just the flip side of the coin.
I mean,
Um,
it's the same obsession. It's
oh
just
yes,
the other way. Yeah, I could,
yes,
yeah. If I grew up in a different environment, maybe where if all rock stars were 300 pounds,
right. You'd be like, that's
what
what
if
I need.
what if the Stones all look like The Rock? Like the
Yeah,
Stones,
yeah.
like then I would be like, oh,
You're just like shooting steroids
yeah,
into directly into the muscle and
yeah, like
just.
all these bodybuilders are playing jumping jack flash, and I was like, oh man, I gotta bulk
I'm
up.
I'm picturing alternate universe Kevin right now, and I'm dying. I'm
Yeah,
dying laughing. I am also when you were talking about this is not funny, but it's funny. Like when you talked about being in the recovery center and you guys having to do this field trip, for lack of a better word, to the fast food place. All I can think about is like, how many of there were you?
um, well, there were they came in and came out, but it was probably about 15.
Okay, so there's 15 people. Is that including the therapists or just the
Yeah, we
patients?
all
Okay.
had,
Okay,
yeah,
so there's 15 people. It's
yeah,
like a big ass group that shows up to this fast food place. And I just can't stop thinking about that kid that's behind the register having to ring up y'all's orders because
yeah.
I know me up at that register, like just looking and being like, I can't, there's nothing here. I can't, like just having a fucking mental breakdown.
Yeah, they couldn't understand it. They
They're
were
like, what the
like,
fuck? And if they see you guys coming again or like a
yeah,
different group,
it's like, oh my
oh,
god,
they're like, oh shit, I am not getting paid enough to deal with
yeah,
this right now.
these neurotic like these, eat your pizza. I mean, come
Just
on.
fucking eat it. What's your problem? Yeah, outwardly for people who don't struggle with this, it's very confusing for
Yeah.
people. I
No, but we
remember,
thought,
yeah,
yeah, but we would have like some people have meltdowns. I did too. I would sometimes like stare at like that thing and just go, oh, I can't do it. And then,
yeah,
like no one force fed you. Like if
yeah,
really couldn't do it, you couldn't do it.
yeah, yeah.
But you tried
Right. The whole point is you're there to get better.
yeah,
So you're
yeah,
trying the exercise.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea, and it's like the idea is, I think what they're thinking is like, say you're, on the road somewhere and you're in the middle of nowhere and you're hungry. Like I was doing this gig the other night. It was in a bowling alley, and
Hmm.
I was hungry, and I had to go on stage, and the only food there was like the bar, bar food, like
Hot dogs,
like yeah, what
popcorn,
sliders,
nachos, sliders,
yeah, yes, like like wings, buffalo wings, whatever those
lots of
are.
things in baskets.
Yeah, yeah, and fried. And I was like, screw it. I need the energy. I'm just going to eat it. And it did. To be honest, it wasn't that bad. It was fine. And I felt so much better. I played so much better. It's like
Good for you.
before I would have, I would have
Yeah.
starved myself. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the kind of thing they were trying to get us to get comfortable with. Like
Right.
if we're really hungry and there aren't options, go ahead and have the Big Mac. Just
Right.
it's all
Yeah.
it's you won't die. You'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the things that I would say is my like things that I do in sobriety. Like I do have some of these like rules for myself, for lack of a better word, with which, by the way, for people who already struggle with this stuff, it's not uncommon for you to get a bunch of new rules because then you feel like you're controlling with the new rules.
Yeah.
But I did have a couple things for myself where I was like, okay, no red light foods, which means everything's okay to eat, which before everything was like red light, right? Everything
Right.
was like I can't have it. So there's no red light foods, and wherever I was at, I had to eat at that place. So if I went to a restaurant with someone, I couldn't say I'm going to eat later or I already ate or I'll eat somewhere else. Like that was not an option. I had to eat something where I was at, which is much like what you're describing.
Right.
That's what I made myself do. And sometimes I would sit and I would stare at that goddamn menu for way fucking too long. I'd be looking at every ingredient and I'd be like, oh, that has one ingredient I don't want. Like, or I one ingredient I can't have, so I can't have. And I'd go to the next thing. And then sometimes I'd just stare there. And then I would start to get like really um uh uncomfortable or like ashamed that I
Yeah.
couldn't figure something out. And then
Yeah.
I would really start to like lose it because I'm like, oh my God, I'm so pathetic. Like I can't find one thing on the stupid menu. Like everybody else just can pick something
Yeah.
from the menu. Like what's wrong with me? Like, so I remember that being a thing. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that that is something they made you do because I didn't go to a recovery center and that's something they made you do. So I kind of made myself do that. I'm my own mean therapist apparently. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I took it even a step farther. I was so neurotic because I had to do a lot of business lunches. So
oh
like
my
a lot of times,
gosh.
so they would go, okay, we're going to go out to X restaurant. I'm like, no, I can't go there. I don't know how to eat. So I would Google the menu, like an hour before,
Right.
and just figure out exactly what I was going to get.
Right.
So like, and I'm not even thinking about the job or what I'm gonna like, what like I'm not like the pitch or whatever I'm gonna do. I'm thinking about
All
how I
about it.
get
Yep.
through this meal. And so I would go and I research the menu and okay, so when the menu comes around, I'm gonna get this, this, and this, and this, and then if I'm just gonna kind of play around with it and eat a little bit of it, and then
Mhm.
because I had no, I had never been full for a long time.
Mhm.
Like I was always my stomach was either really full
Mhm.
for about 30 minutes and then
Right.
full and empty. So I never like walked around the world with like, kind of some sort of normal
Yeah.
satiety. Is that the word?
Yeah. No, totally. You had no idea what it was like to be
Yeah.
satiated. You were either starving or over brimming, like too
Yeah.
full.
Yeah. And so when I, and then, and then I couldn't, and I couldn't eat. I couldn't eat, or I tried to. I just did the best I could, but it was, I was very, very nervous, and I'm sure it affected my business at some level. I mean, I'm sure
Mhm.
people could sense that I wasn't very present at that point.
Mhm.
I wasn't listening. Because I was preoccupied with eating and
Mhm.
how I looked eating and that kind of thing. So,
I hated eating in front of people. I've gotten way
yeah,
better, but I fucking hated that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, me too. But now, I guess just to kind of bring it forward. So just it's the whole that whole issue, that whole problem in my life,
Mhm.
it's gone. It's completely gone. It's
I
been
love that.
it's totally I don't like I just go in the fridge, whatever's in there, I make it.
Yep.
It really is gone. And I never thought it could be. I always thought
Yeah.
and like I was on the path to some real bad stuff because I was super low in potassium. Like so there was some real
Oh, wow. You were having some health
oh
problems.
big time. My
Would
doc
you say like this is like a like kind of your rock bottom? Were you
yeah,
having
well,
like,
'cause
yeah.
my doctors would say like Kevin, your potassium is super low. What's going on?
You're like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I guess I
What could
just
it
have a
be?
yeah. I just have fast metabolism.
What could it be?
Yeah, yeah. And they were like, "We're, you're it's like really low. What's going on?" And people were like, and I was kind of people, and my doctors would say this, and I would go to the doctor, and he said because if your potassium gets too low, you could have a heart attack. I mean,
Yes.
it's a real big.
Yes.
I was informed it was a real big deal,
Yes.
and they told me that I had to eat. They told me I had to eat red meat and I had to eat all this stuff. That's what the doctor said. And so and they were concerned. I mean, I think they all probably knew I had an eating disorder, and I was on the levels. So and now my potassium is fine,
Mhm.
but I think that's potassium is that happens when you purge a lot. Like when you purge, like you lose that,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
really important. And they gave me a potassium pills, but I mean, what's going to do if I'm
Yeah, if you're just doing what you're doing. Yeah.
I just took them just because I wanted to pretend like I was working on a solution,
Right.
but I wasn't.
You're like, "Oh no.
No, no, yeah, okay, I'll take those potassium pills.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll do
Sure,
that."
sure. Oh yeah, I'm eating 3 meals a
I'll,
day.
I mean, listen, if anybody you ask anybody about any problem they have, if you offer them a pill, I'll
Yeah,
give you this pill and you can fix it. We will all take it.
yeah. But I mean,
Fight me, anybody.
yeah,
I will put money on it. If
yeah,
you any problem you have, if you could just take a pill to fix it, everybody would say yes.
yeah, yeah,
If you
definitely.
say no, you are lying. You're a
Yeah.
lying liar.
so yeah, so that happened, but I did relapse a lot, and to me, it caused problems with my relationship.
Hmm.
It definitely, because with my experience with eating disorder is that it's there's a lot of relapse. It's really
Hmm.
hard to get over it, and like the main thing I would take away from, or I would say to anybody who's listening is that not to shame yourself. If you relapse, just get
Yeah.
back up on the horse. Like, don't like
Yeah.
it's relapse is kind of part of it. It took me a long time,
Yeah.
you know, and I just have to keep going back. And like I do it, and if every time if I beat myself up when I threw up,
Hmm.
I could. It would just make me feel worse. I mean, it could have been like I felt suicidal. I felt
Hmm.
so bad about myself, so gross and disgusting because it's a disgusting disease, to really think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah, and then to know that's a part of you and that's what you do, that's your main, So anyhow, so I relapsed, but then through OA and through that rehab, but mainly
Hmm.
the rehab wasn't. I was there for maybe 4 months or something like that,
Hmm.
but I still am active in OA because the fellowship and
Yeah.
and I like, it's more, the camaraderie it's a lot about camaraderie and sort of having people understand what you've been through and
Yeah.
get it. People who get how weird, food is. I think more and more people are understanding about food and opening up about it uh,
Yeah.
more. I think the male community is, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think I've heard before in the rooms that and just in the recovery community in general that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I
Oh,
think like when we're dealing with stuff like this, like, and I love that you relate it or call it an addiction because I do feel like that behavior or those habits are that they are benefiting you and you are getting things out of it like you do an addiction. If you can't stop something, that is an addiction. And the opposite of addiction is connection. And that is definitely what the fellowships have been for me. And it sounds like the same for you. It's like a nice upkeep, like thing to like just help you stay on the path of whatever your chosen journey is. How did you learn about OA?
well, I was in Al-Anon before.
Okay.
So that was my first program was Al-Anon. And so once I was in Al-Anon, then I started meeting people who were in other programs,
Yeah.
and then I heard about OA. But I didn't, when my first uh, idea or first, like the way I perceived OA was overeaters. People
Right.
who had, they were heavy, right? They're heavy,
Right.
we didn't lose weight. That there wasn't, like, it didn't address, the title doesn't address someone who is bulimic.
Right. Right.
So I was like, "What? I don't have that problem.
Right.
I'm not overweight."
Right. I don't qualify.
Yeah. And so finally I had, like, through enough talking to enough people, I was able to go. And I went to, I think, I can't remember the trajectory. I think I went to a therapist first
Mhm.
who specialized in eating disorders because I knew I had one, but
Mhm.
I just didn't. I was so embarrassed about it that I didn't want anyone to know. So I just kind of did it really on the down low.
Yes, I think the embarrassment and the shame about, people who struggle with eating disorders in specific, and I would even say like maybe other addictions as well, like um, whether it be alcohol or drugs, whatever, like we are so hard on ourselves and we lack so much compassion
Yeah.
for ourselves, like that when you're trying to get sober or abstinent or whatever, like you were talking about, like the relapsing and how, the best thing you can do is give yourself some grace. But the hardest thing to do in that moment is to give yourself some grace because that's the nature of it, like people who aren't, talking shit to themselves 24/7 are not dealing with these types of issues, like there's definitely that we all I feel like have in common. Um, Thank you for talking about therapy. I'm always a big proponent of people going to therapists. If you can get a therapist that specializes in eating disorders, even better. But if you can't, just get a therapist. If they're
Yeah.
not right for you, get a different one. I love that you brought up, an actual recovery place because I think that's also really important. And thank you so much for talking about the fact that if you have health insurance, check with them because they may cover part or all of it,
Yeah.
and no one has to find out because the laws are there to protect you.
Yeah.
Um, so today you talk about like through all of these things, right? All of these, this whole journey you've been on, that today you're not imprisoned by the food or the body stuff. Like you're able to just live your life.
Yeah. No, I can live my life. I mean, it's not, life is life, right? It's not rosy every day. I still have struggles, but what I don't have is that monkey on my back of,
Right.
like thinking about food all the time and going and buying food. I'm not in a prison, but like my life is way more varied. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not, I have problems and I have issues, but like I get to be present. And I get to
Right.
feel them in the current time, in real time, and I'm not thinking about other stuff. So yeah, yeah, I don't have the obsession anymore. The
Right.
obsession has been lifted, the food obsession. And just so my so it in it, in OA, we define our own abstinence. Like not everyone, that's what's weird about, like, the difference between AA is, like, AA is just like you don't drink and
Right.
that's abstinence. In
That's
OA,
it.
like, yeah, different people have different things. Like I'm a restrictor. I got off on telling you what I wouldn't eat. I'd love
Hmm.
to tell you, like, all my ailments and all my stuff and all restricting, and I really, so for me, everything's on the table. Like I can eat I can eat whatever I want, because if you tell me I can't eat something, I'm going to plow through it like crazy because I just
Hmm.
have that rebellious nature. You
Hmm.
say, I can't eat flour. I'm going to go, fuck you. I
Hmm.
mean, I'll eat all the flour I want. Don't tell
Hmm.
me what to do. And I don't know where I got that from, but so for me, what works is to go, oh yeah, I could have that if I want. But
Hmm.
what ends up happening is that I really don't crave it. Like I really don't eat sugar. I hardly ever eat it,
Yeah.
but I could
Right.
if I want to. If someone baked me a cake, and most of the time when I eat sugar now, it's because like, just because someone made it, took
Right.
4 or 5 hours to make something, and I'm
Right.
like, I'll just take a bite of it, like,
Right. It'll bring them so much happiness. It's
yeah,
really, and it's something I can do now.
yeah,
So
yeah, I could take a bite or two, I usually
yeah.
won't finish it, but I'll just go, yeah, you slaved in the kitchen for like
Yeah.
10 hours, all right, I'll do you a favor. Eat it.
I used to love to tell people all of these weird ass food facts that I don't even know if they're true or not.
Yeah,
Like I probably read it somewhere and then it swarmed around in my head, and like sometimes I have uh I don't know if it's talent or not to recall certain facts like of like I don't know, like someone a little, I don't even know what the word would be. It's sometimes just weird. But I would tell people these weird facts about like, oh, if you eat that or like this causes this, and like, oh, they did a study on, whatever. Like, I don't even know what they are anymore because I've let
yeah,
them leave my brain because I'm like, number one, you don't need to be telling anyone about anything about their food. Number two, like you don't even know if this is true. You don't know where it came from. Like there's also a really huge concerted effort with the like, well, and here it is. Here it's coming out right here. I thought I had lost it here. This is on the opposite side of it, though. There was a concerted effort at one point in time to basically push organic produce. And so there was like a lot of this talk about the dirty dozen, the dozen fruits and vegetables that are the most affected by pesticides and that you absolutely
oh yeah,
should not eat, like that kind of stuff, right? But there was actually like, that's not entirely true. So there's information on both sides of that. And now I lean on the other side of like, it's better to eat than not for myself, for my own health. But I loved giving out all those weird little like
like
facts.
like nightshades or like cause weird like whatever
Oh, yeah, like, oh, if you eat wheat, you're gonna
Yeah,
cause inflammation throughout your whole
yeah,
system, and that's where every autoimmune,
yeah,
comes from. Like, what? Like, what are you even talking? Like, I didn't even go to college. Like, who am
yeah,
I even to be talking about that to
yeah,
begin with?
yeah, yeah,
Like what paper did I read? What article do I think who even published it? So there's that I, like I really recognize as well in myself, and it reminds me of some of the things you've said.
yeah.
Um, so you talked about presence, like having presence now that you've gained in recovery. Is there anything else that you would say in recovery that you've gained?
Um, I think it's the ability just to kind of hang out and to be around people and not
Right.
have that pressure to go off and do something. Like I w- I notice that when I go out for social occasions or if I go out and do, I'm not worried about when it's going to end. I don't have any. It's like I'll leave when I want to leave. I think that I used to be so uptight about food and the schedule that eating that I had to do that I couldn't really hang out. I had to go do something else. I couldn't stay in one place for a long time. And now, especially when I work in some of these gigs that I have to show up early for a sound check, and it's like I have to hang out for a couple of hours with nothing to do. And I'm a lot more tolerant because I don't have to worry about what I'm going to eat or what I'm going
Right.
to do, and I can just stay that can just be present. I guess I'm a little bit less ambitious, I think, than I used to be. I used to be really like I got to achieve, I got to do something, I got to put my stamp on the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really care about that
That's a
anymore.
lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think the pandemic helped out with that because I got a lot of time to realize, like I'm doing okay. I don't need to win the Nobel Peace Prize or anything like that. Like I'm okay if I just keep kind of doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. The pandemic was a great equalizer of
Yeah.
everyone doing nothing for the
Yeah.
most part. I mean, there were people who had to do, like obviously people who kept everything running, those types of very, very important jobs. But the rest of us in entertainment and even just in a lot of our, it was like the great equalizer. Like
Yeah.
nobody could one up anybody unless you actually still had to work instead of got the stimmies. No one could go on and be like, oh, I'm going this and I'm doing that. No one's
Yeah.
like, you're not doing shit. No one's doing
Yeah.
anything.
Check me
Like,
out,
yeah, no,
my
no,
record went platinum,
no, everyone's dreams and aspirations were dead and we all just accepted it. And for those of us, who are constantly in compare and despair, got a vacation. It
Yeah,
was a
I
highly anxious vacation, but it was a vacation.
it was totally well, I mean, for me personally, I used to go into the office. I mean, I used to wear a coat and tie all the time. Like,
I met you and I had never seen you out of a three-piece suit.
I know.
And you look good in a suit, my friend. I
No,
have
thank
got
you.
to say, you
Thank you.
wore very nice tailored suits. You look good in a suit.
Yeah,
You like there's people who like look good in suits. First of all, you put on a suit, you're like, oh, people look nice. Then there's people who look good in suits. They look good. I
yeah.
shouldn't be commenting on your looks, period. But I what I do
No,
to
no,
bring it up.
bring it on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. But
yeah,
I do actually because you pick your style sense with
Yeah,
your suit was really good. Like,
yeah.
it's not just like, oh, I look good in a suit and I wear suits. It's like you picked really nice suits. You wore them well, like I will say
Well,
that.
if I can digress, I'll tell you the one secret.
Yes.
It's not how the quality of the suit necessarily, it's how well it's tailored.
What a good thing to know. Yes.
So you could buy, like, I would go and get relatively cheap suits, maybe 4 or 500, but I would make sure that I got them tailored. Um, and this is kind of triggering. This is kind of because it has to do with body too. But I mean, I'm just
Right.
saying, like, I would just get them to be tailored well, and so that made them look like more expensive,
Mhm.
because they just fit well. That's all.
Mhm.
But so I wore the suits, but then after the pandemic, I had to stay at home, and I didn't put on the suits as much,
Right.
myself, and then I didn't have to go into the office, and then I set up my office from home, and now I have a home office, and so I have an office that I could go to,
Right.
um, and also I'm an independent contractor, so I had to pay for my own office. The company didn't, so
Right.
I saved some money. So yeah, so it changed a lot. I still like to put on suits. I still like to do it, but
Yeah.
I don't do it all the time anymore.
Yeah.
It's not part of the uniform.
When I get things tailored, well, not anymore, but pre-recovery, I would get things tailored within an inch of my life so that I could keep them as my own personal prison
Yeah,
for not
right.
fitting into them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the danger. It is a dangerous thing. I mean,
Well, there's well tailored, and then there's like what I do, which is like under tailoring.
right.
It's like,
You make it really really so you can,
yeah,
so you got to make sure you can fit it in all the time. And there was
yeah,
a part of me, like, there was a trend for suits with men where they were super thin.
yeah, like just so like, yeah, like the skinny suits or whatever
Yeah,
they would call them. They would call
yeah.
them like,
Just like you see guys with suits that were just like
yeah,
popping out of them, and I'm like, oh
yeah,
no, yeah, that's not my fave.
yeah. I
Yeah,
agree with
yeah,
that. You mentioned a little bit earlier, you talked about like sugar, like you don't even crave it because you're allowed to have it. I do really think that when we stop fetishizing certain things, over time we take away the obsession with them.
right.
So like I do find in myself that if I tell myself, I can't have any pastries or bread, well, now all I'm going to do is be obsessed with all those things that I can't have, and now everywhere I go is everything I can't have, and now all I'm going to think about is all the things that I want. And when I've been able to be like, you can have whatever you want, like you really can, like
Yeah,
it'd be nice if you could get some vitamins in what you eat and like make some good choices for things that are going to fuel you and bring you energy. But everything is all, you can have anything. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I don't want that. I want, you know,
you
I
know,
can, yeah,
I want food that makes me feel good.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, so you can have it. Yeah, and that's not to say someone who's on a strict food plan. There's people in the program who haven't had sugar for 30 years, and
Right.
if that works for them, that's fine. Maybe that's what they need
Right.
to keep their that's just not. I know myself. I know my body.
Yes, same.
And,
I
and
don't struggle with that addiction to sugar. I have
yeah,
noticed because I am sober from alcohol, and whereas I wouldn't say that I was as sick in alcoholism as, some people might be, like it still affected me in a way where once I started drinking, I didn't really want to stop, but like day to day. So my
yeah,
drinking was not in like quantity, it was in like consistency.
right.
And I did notice when I stopped drinking, I craved a lot more sugar.
Okay.
Like a lot more sugar. Like every day I wanted sugar. And that is not uncommon, not only because there's a lot of sugar I hear in alcohol, but
Yeah,
also because of what your brain is doing. Like your brain wants that hit, it
yeah,
wants that spike in whatever. So I say that just to say that in case anybody's relating to that. There's another thing I want to talk to you. It's not really eating related or food related, but I just want everybody to know, especially a lot of dancers who might be listening, that you're my financial advisor and you are a fiduciary financial advisor.
yeah,
So I want people to know that, first of all, a lot of financial advisors, or at least you, oftentimes, and you used to do this, I don't know if you still do this, you used to offer a free, like, kind of complimentary meet to discuss
yeah.
finances as a new client, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. To see
And you,
if it's a good fit. Yeah.
right. And you kind of help people go through and you might even give them some advice or not. and
Yeah.
then they can decide if they want to come back and like utilize your services.
Right. Exactly.
So there is that. And so I want people to know that, because I think people a lot of times think, oh, I can't afford a financial advisor.
Right.
And it's like, well, it's actually, you probably can afford a financial advisor, and you may want to consider one, especially if you're looking to invest or even just get some information on how to properly manage your money a little bit. And so you are a fiduciary. Will you tell people, in your words, what is the difference between a fiduciary and a non-fiduciary financial advisor?
Yeah. Well, there used to be two standards: the brokerage, like a stockbroker kind of standard, that if something is suitable for, like, so if I would have a it like if a financial product that I'm selling is suitable for a client, so yeah, like this would work for you. It's a pretty good financial instrument. That would be the broker standards. But a fiduciary is, you have to do what's in the client's best interest and put your interests below the client's. So I might, like, say I sold you a mutual fund, and it might be a pretty good mutual fund, but I'm going to get paid, say, 5% on that mutual fund. But there's a better one that would suit you, like, more for your needs. Maybe I get paid 4% on that one. It's my duty not to take, but not to give you something that's not quite right for you, for me to
Hmm.
get paid more, than to give you something that's like really good fit, and I get paid a little bit less. So it's
So
just it's just putting the client in, like, the client interest first. Not, just like best fit for the client.
that's excellent. Everybody needs to pay attention to that, because just because someone's your financial advisor doesn't mean they have to advise you financially to your best interest.
Right. That's it.
So that's the catch. That's the loophole, because some people who work for financial advising, if they are a non-fiduciary, that means they're gonna, yeah, I'll invest your money, but it's gonna be for their best interest most likely. I mean, maybe it could be dual, but they're gonna look out for themselves and their business. Whereas if you're a fiduciary, you are held by law and ethics
Yeah.
to do what's in my best interest. So if you're going to get a financial advisor, get one who's a fiduciary. They have to tell you if they are or not. You can ask them. Sometimes it shows on there, you look them up. So
You
just
can.
make sure.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
FINRA, you can look at Broker Check, is what it's called. That's the website, brokercheck.com. And
Broker check. We'll put it in the show notes.
you can see any complaints that a financial advisor has had. You can see the whole history, because after 2008, after Madoff, the industry really got a little bit more, uh,
Regulated.
yeah, exactly. Regulated is the word I'm looking for, because after the housing crisis and all the AIG stuff, and
They got
this,
a little slap on their wrists.
yeah, yeah, we
Oh,
got,
you guys.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
guys with your stealing again.
yeah, yeah. Oh, you Wall Street bros,
Yeah.
culture. But what but so yeah, there's a lot of things that protect the client, but fiduciary is definitely something that you want to do. I mean, that's just the way I would operate anyhow. But
Yeah.
some people need that kind of regulation, because a lot of times it really tests, like, you can get greedy, like, if I could sell you something, and it's pretty good for you, but I'm going to make more money than selling you the thing that's right. It's sometimes hard for people to just go, I'll just take the money,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it's hard for people to when a lot of money comes around, it's hard to make that, you've got to really kind of keep your scruples together.
Right, right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, because you will ask me sometimes, you'll be like, how do you feel about this product?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this product? And he's asking me morally, do I, if I am, do I have a moral obligation or a moral, conundrum, or, whatever, against a certain product, because he knows that I don't want to invest my money in maybe something that would possibly be against my ethics of
Yeah.
or values or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I have some clients who don't invest in petroleum, or like or yeah, there's certain kinds of products like firearms or something like that.
Right.
I couldn't do, whatever, yeah, and stuff. There's certain things that they prefer not to put their money towards,
Hmm.
and I can design portfolios to eliminate that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so I like that you do that, and I love that you're always kind of like researching stuff, because I'll hit you up and I'll be like, "Hey Kevin, have you heard of green steel or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah,
And a lot of times you're like, oh, you know what? It's so interesting you said that because I was just talking to so and so about that. And
yeah,
sometimes you're like, no, I haven't, but I want to know what is it? I'm going to look
yeah,
it up. And then I'll
yeah,
talk to you again. You're like, okay, so here's the deal. This is where we want to do this. This isn't. This is
yeah.
the best place to go. This isn't. If you want to do this, you should do that. So Kevin's just like got such a good amount of information on all that stuff. I highly recommend getting a financial advisor if you don't already have one. And, it's not just about investments. People like him have just a lot of really good information about next steps you could take to, make
Yeah.
your financial situation better for the future or for now.
And another thing that I specialize is I worked a lot with people in the arts. So I come from an artistic background.
Yes.
Made my living playing guitar. I still play. I don't play. I
Hmm.
don't make my living playing, but I still am active out, playing gigs and things like that. And so that's a big part of what I do. And a lot of my clients are artists, film composers, dancers. I've got people who are retired and they play music. So there's a lot of, and so I understand what it's like to be an artist and to have a career in the arts because it's really difficult to have
Yeah.
a career in the arts. I mean, it's like it's super hard. It's super hard. It's probably harder than being a financial advisor, to be honest. It's
You've
like
seen
having,
both sides, so you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's having a career. I mean, you've really got to have it together. You've got to juggle all these different hats and
Yeah.
things, and it's not like every there's not it's hard because there's not enough room for like if everyone who wanted to be a rock star could be a rock star, there'd be too many rock stars. There's not enough
Right.
room for every kid who like all those kids at Guitar Center who play,
Right.
like they
Right.
can't. They're not all going to be rock stars. They can't.
Right. Every kid playing basketball in high
Yeah,
school is
it's
not going
not
to
going to be
make
Michael
it.
Jordan. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. For
So
sure. And I think there's a lot of like talk about shame, money shame. People's shame associated with money or their finances is extreme. I learned that a lot in the pandemic because I was helping people try to get loans or to
uh,
helping them like how to take advantage of some of the government programs. And I was shocked by how much shame everybody met me with. Like I didn't they were like the first thing they did was almost like apologize to me about their financial situation. And it's like, A, it's none of my business, and also B, like you don't have to feel bad about that. Like
yeah,
it is what it is, and you just like figure it out. And also for those who might be interested, there is a 12-step program for that. It's called DA. It's called Debtors Anonymous, and it can help you with managing your money. It's actually a really, really awesome program. It actually has like legit games and tools and shit. It's like it's a whole it's a
yeah,
whole thing, and I'm going to link it because I think it's such a great program, and I think it's something that like every artist should be in DA just to help with all of it. Like there because of like it's hard to negotiate your own rates sometimes if you haven't
yeah.
been taught that growing up, and DA can help with that. So I'm big on that as well. Okay, I have one more question for you, Kevin.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
Now I know that because of our recovery, we are not in the business of giving advice, but I'm wondering if you had any suggestion for anyone who might be suffering right now.
Uh, yeah, I would say the first thing is just try to go to a meeting. Just try to go to an OA meeting or or call. I mean, that would be the first thing, or call someone, or just try to you go to. I think OA has a website, right?
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
can go there and then and research it, but just also to realize that like this, there's you may not feel it or understand it, but there's so many people who are going through whatever difficulty. You're not unique.
Hmm.
Someone has gone through whatever you've gone
You're
through.
very special, but you are not
Yeah,
unique.
yeah. You're not like there's other male bulimics. There's
Hmm.
other
Yeah.
people who do these these things, and you're not alone.
Hmm.
And the more you can just be able to just talk about it and share it and realize that like most people aren't going to shame you or judge you for it,
Hmm.
for having gone through it. There might be some people. I mean, but the majority of us are not.
Yeah.
So
Those are
that
people who just don't get it. They don't
yeah,
get it.
yeah. And so people who are from the older generation who just are shut down anyhow about
Yep.
everything. So
Yep.
why would they empathize with someone who has an eating disorder?
Right.
But that I would say try to you get to a meeting, and if you can't go on the website, but try to go get or just try to get talk about it, get help. I mean, I
Hmm.
know there's recovery centers too. There's I don't know if the one in Santa Monica. I don't know if it's still there because of the pandemic, but but there's definitely they're around, you know. So so that's what I would say. I'd say try to find an OA meeting, number one, and go, and then
And
and, yeah, and go and realize it's going to be uncomfortable, you know, but like you're going to be taking. It's like what like I heard it in a meeting the other day. It's like choose your pain. Like it's gonna be painful to continue where you're going. You're gonna
mhm.
path that you're on. It's gonna be painful to go to a meeting. But what is which pain do you want? Like I think I'd rather take the pain of going to a meeting, like you said,
Right.
for the first time. Like
I've
that's
heard of that.
yeah.
I've heard it in a different with a different word. I've heard it as choose your hard.
Oh, you're hard. Okay, yeah,
But choose your pain is just
yeah,
as valid because it
yeah,
is like things are, choose your suffering, choose your
right,
pain because life is painful. There is
yeah,
suffering. Life is hard. So you choose your hard, you choose
yeah.
your pain, you choose your suffering because both are there, right? Getting help is painful. Staying where you're at is painful.
Right, right. It's a pain. Sometimes it's a pain to go to the meeting, like to get up, go. I got to go to a meeting. Why do I have to go to a meeting? Like, you know, like why
Hmm.
me? You know, like
Hmm.
sometimes I'll get like that. Why me? Why do I have to do it? You know, like
Hmm.
you know, that guy doesn't have to do it. That girl doesn't have to do it.
Hmm.
Why do I have to go to these church basements? And on Tuesday night. Why do I have to do that?
I know. I know. I'm so
Yeah,
glad you did because I got to meet you.
yeah, yeah, cool.
Kevin, thank you, thank you, thank you so much
Of
for coming
course.
on the podcast and sharing your experience. I'm going to link, OA obviously is always linked below. I'm going to link Broker Check. I'm going to link, a bunch of things for people and resources. I can't thank you enough for coming and being a part of Gray Maybe and again, sharing your experience with me. Thank you.
Of course, Julian. My pleasure. My pleasure.
See you soon.
Okay, take care.
Talking to Kevin is always so easy for me. I always feel like he articulates things that I really relate to and without any shame or embarrassment, and often with some lighthearted humor. I remember Kevin in my early days of recovery, before I knew him, before we had ever had a coffee fellowship meetup, before I knew that he played bass or was a financial advisor. He was just another person sitting in a chair across from me in a circular formation talking about food and body stuff. He was one of the people who had it figured out. I was always so impressed with Kevin's ease to speak on things so bravely and so courageously in his well-tailored suit. He always sat back in the chair relaxed, with one leg crossed, and spoke in an unshakable voice. I remember watching and listening to him thinking, damn, I want to be like that someday. I feel so privileged to be a friend of Kevin's. Now that I've gotten a bit of recovery myself, I can confirm. Believe Kevin when he says there's a way out and there's a freedom available to you, even if you can't see it or feel it yet. I hope you found something that resonated in my conversation with Kevin today. If you're listening to this episode and you're realizing that you're more like Kevin and I than not, welcome. And I hope this helps you take a step in the direction of recovery if you haven't already. You're not alone. Just a reminder for anyone who needs to hear it, you don't need to wait until you're sick enough to get help. In fact, you don't have to be sick at all, just a desire to feel a little better. If you're listening and right now you're struggling with an ED, disordered eating, or other behaviors, welcome. Know that whatever you're feeling, there are those among us that have probably felt it too. You're not alone. If you're listening because you have someone you love in your life that is suffering or is in recovery for an ED, welcome. You're also not alone. Even having an eating disorder myself, I have not reacted the best I could to others who were struggling before my own recovery. I've attached the do's and don'ts of how to deal with someone suffering in the show notes, as well as how to contact Kevin and myself, and various links for help and recovery when and if you're ready. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is also a social experiment to see if in telling my story, I can embolden listeners to share their stories. If you'd like me to read your recovery story on this topic, anonymous or otherwise, on the podcast, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com, GreyMaybesTories@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Grey Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor Roderick Barge. Cover photo by Jose Perez. Music licensed by Pixabay. Special counsel Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporter Patty Olgan. If you'd like to support this podcast, please rate, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye for now.